Hello everyone, and thank you for waiting so patiently for Zarina to present herself to you orally or visually. So now we have the best of Zarina looking and sounding good. And Zarina is here today to tell us about her philosophy. So, I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us what you're going to tell us.
Hello everyone, my name is Zarina Matcha, aka the Rational Female. I'm really sorry for the wait. I was going to do this on my phone because I actually did another StreamYard thing with somebody earlier for this project I'm in called Houses of Argument, and normally StreamYard on my phone is fine, but for some reason it was just being really stupid, so I'm now using my computer, and I use my phone because the light is much better. Mine is so old, but I got my lamp, so yeah, hopefully I look okay. Yeah, everything I
Yeah,
have
you
is
look.
old. And,
Yeah, you look good. I mean, it's actually a better light, I think, now
Thank
than before.
you.
Yes, I mean, if you were cared about my opinion, and so we are here to ask Zarina about her philosophy. You have written a book. Is it out yet? Did you write a book? Is this
So I'm currently working on a book called The Rational Female. I think on my website it says it's going to be out this year. That's wrong. It's actually going to be out next year. So yeah, 2024. And yes, it's called The Rational Female, and it's basically going to outline the philosophy of women's advocacy, which is the non-feminist alternative to effectively female empowerment. And I've been talking a lot about the idea of starting off a non-feminist women's movement. It's been on my mind a lot over the past several months. I think I had the idea randomly, really. I was out in the park and just thinking, like, we need a non-feminist women's movement because feminism has obviously had the monopoly on female thought and female empowerment for so long. And I think that having something better for women that is pro women but also supports men and support the men's rights movement, I really think is desperately needed, especially in the West.
do you have any contacts in the men's rights movement?
I know there's some men at Speaker's Corner who are in the men's rights movement. There's one man who I've spoken to quite a few times.
Oh,
There's a
oh,
man.
the New Zealander.
I don't know where he's from. There's yeah, him. Yeah, well, I'm not talking about him, but yeah, Rods. Yeah, he's New Zealand. Yeah, he's been doing it for like 8 years, and he always has the thing of us saying Studio B, Janice Fiamenko, great channel. And I know Mike Buchanan as well. I've spoken with him. We're not really in communication. I think he's just very busy. But yeah, I don't really because I'm not. I don't want to say like I'm not a men's rights activist. Like as much as I support the men's rights movement, I think that that's for men. I don't really want to like. I'm not a men's rights activist. I'm trying to do something for women. I think we need non-feminist women's advocacy because there isn't really a women's movement, a women's philosophy now. There's just feminism, feminism, feminism. So yeah, I don't really want to infringe upon men's spaces. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it would be good if men and women were kind of agreed about the kind of society they want to live in and the kind of relationship they want to have. I mean, I would have thought it was, marriage, the terms of the marriage contract, if agreeable to both parties, would be the way forward. And,
I totally agree, but I think as well that I mean, I'm just one woman just trying to start something. I'm like, I don't have any money. I'm like just one girl trying to start something. I mean, yeah, long term, I'd love to work more with men in the men's rights movement. I mean, also the men's rights movement, while it has all of the research, is dreadfully underfunded. I almost forgot about a lovely man named Adam James, who I did a couple of YouTube things with, I think a year or so ago. I know he's very active within the men's movement. I mean, he interviewed me on his channel about a year ago, and I think beginning of this year I had him and this other fellow on my channel. So yeah, he's Australian. But he's had a lot of problems, like he's told me about how a lot of men as well in the men's rights movement, they've genuinely had their lives ruined because of feminism and the feminists and all of that kind of political indoctrination. So it has been really, really quite difficult.
do you get on with the women in the men's rights movement? There are a few of them, aren't there?
Well, again, I don't really know anyone, like, I don't know many people in the men's rights movement. I know there are some people. Again, oh my god, I keep remembering people now. Of course, there's another man named Blue Orange 22 who's an American man. He came to Speaker's Corner in the summer. And yeah, like, I think, again, with the men's rights movement, the problem is that there isn't really a male figurehead to kind of carry it through. It's all just scattered around. Like, they need a man. They need like a male figurehead to lead them. I think the men's rights movement needs a male figurehead.
Needs an alpha male, and there are no alpha males around anywhere, in my view. But I was asking you about females in the men's rights movement. Have you met any of them?
Well, I know the only prominent females I know of are Karen Strawn, obviously Professor Janice Fiamenko, have much respect for. There's a girl, a woman named Elizabeth Hobson, I believe. I've got her number. But again, they're all just so busy. I think they're just tired. I think a lot of people are tired. You know, they've been fighting this fight for a really long time. And I think that people are really exhausted. So it's like they just want things to get done now. People just want feminism gone, really.
Yes, but I mean, you know my view. I'm just saying, you know, Sharia will sort feminism out, but you don't quite agree. And I guess I will just continue to ask you about, you know, what you've said about your book, which I thought had come out last month in October. But you say it's not due for publication until next year. And you had a short paragraph describing your book, and I have a list of 25 questions, and one of them is feminism. You're obviously against feminism, and you say it's a lie. What is the lie of feminism?
So is this question one?
I'm sorry?
Is this question one? Are you now starting with the questions?
Sorry,
So are you starting with the questions now?
I'm starting with yes, I thought I might start with the questions.
So
If, unless you want to, you know, finish your preamble.
No, that's fine. Yeah, let's go. So feminism is a lie because it's based on these two key, very, very dangerous premises. The first premise being a patriarchy theory, which is a theory that women have always been systemically oppressed by patriarchal society. And the lie that gender is a social construct and that gender roles are a form of oppression. And this is very dangerous because, for example, patriarchy theory makes women believe that women have always been an underclass, that men have created systems, have created buildings and civilizations and social structures with the goal of oppressing women and subjugating women to a subservient social class. And that's what feminism, that's really at the heart of feminism. That's what feminism,
the victimhood.
Yes, it teaches.
And you're saying you don't feel a victim.
Not just me. I think women in general are not victims. I actually think this really distorts. It creates a very dangerous and very distorted view of gender relations between men and women. And when we go to the whole gender as a social construct, this is really dangerous because, as we all know, male and female, masculine and feminine, you know, these are two very, very strong forces in the world, and there are only men and women. And when you teach people that this is a social construct, what you're doing is you're effectively telling people men and women don't really exist. They can be changed. A man can become a woman become a man, you can be non-binary. People really lose gender roles. And when we lose gender roles and when we forget the key differences between men and women, this is effectively the destruction and the crumbling of society, which I think is happening right now in the West.
Yes, so if we have an incorrect view of ourselves, then I guess we're bound to get things wrong, and then have bad experiences with each other, and then end up hating each other and not marrying and having healthy relationships with each other. And I guess the most important male-female relationship must be marriage, because the future of our society depends on it. Because if we don't have children, eventually our country will become depopulated.
I completely agree. And yes, I think feminism is really the destruction of marriage and the family unit. And the way it does this is it does this by teaching men and women that men are the oppressor class, i.e. men are a social class who are there to oppress women, and women are the oppressed class. And this is a premise that is on Marxism. It's based on the proletariat and bourgeoisie, that women are effectively the proletariat and men are the bourgeoisie. And this is very, very dangerous because when you teach people that gender roles fundamentally are framed as men are this oppressor class and women are this oppressed class, people automatically view marriage as a state of female oppression. And we, for example, it was Betty Friedan who popularized this in 1963. She published The Feminine Mystique, and she claimed that marriage was a comfortable concentration camp that had been created by men to oppress women and subjugate women to this patriarchy. This is really, really dangerous. It's very, very unromantic. It's very, very sad. You know, marriage is really supposed to be a celebration of love, a union of joy, two people. Like, weddings are a beautiful thing. I mean, marriage is really supposed to be about what? Two people falling in love and getting together and having a family. That's beautiful. I think only a really sick person would turn around and say that marriage is somehow evil or oppressive.
Or a burden or a sacrifice. I suppose there are also men who are not happy in their marriages, and I think men and women would find it oppressive if they hate the person they married and are forced to stay with them, and I guess we should, choose our spouses carefully, but it's easier said than done because people tend to behave differently before you marry them, and after you marry them, they behave in a totally different way. This is my memory of my childhood when my parents quarrelled with each other, and perhaps if people thought of marriage as something that isn't particularly supposed to bring you happiness, it's something that maybe you think it's just an opportunity. You have the opportunity of being happy, making the right choice of a spouse, and maybe bringing up good children if you're careful and take your duties as a parent seriously. But if you don't, then your children could be a disgrace to you, and you will lead a terrible life if they end up being disappointments or child killers or serial killers, and all kinds of terrible things that might happen to you. So, but then on the other hand, a lot of people would think, yeah, I'd rather get married, or want people to think that at least somebody married is prepared to marry me than not be married at all. So I think that made people just kind of unquestioningly get married and have children without even thinking too much about it. But because we have too much time to think about these things, we end up not doing it, or not doing it as much, and not having enough babies, and then complaining about immigration when there is a labour shortage.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Good. And I think that is kind of, it's not even meant to make you happy. It's like you have to do it whether you like it or not, whether it makes you happy or not. You have to stay with your spouse, because in the olden days you were disgraced if you divorced your spouse.
Well, I think marriage is supposed to bring happiness. I think that's also where a lot of the problem lies. We should be viewing marriage fundamentally as a positive thing, not as a burden. We should view marriage as a union of two people who are in love and who want to make a commitment to each other and stay together through thickness and thin, sickness and health. Like, maybe I'm just coming from a very romantic perspective, but I truly believe marriage is supposed to be about two people
Yeah,
deciding to share a life together and to walk that path together in life. That's what I've always believed, really. I mean, my parents are separated, but when they were married, they had a very beautiful marriage. I mean, I was saying this to a friend, like, we had a fantastic childhood. Generally speaking, I had a very, very hard time at school, but in terms of my family life, I had a very, very, very happy family childhood for like the first maybe 12, 13 years of my life, because my mum and dad were so in love and they had such a wonderful marriage. When it was wonderful, it was really, really good. And that was the bedrock of my childhood. So, I do feel quite strongly about this.
yes. So really, it would be horrible, if you didn't really love your spouse and you got married because you thought, well, I might as well, and what else am I going to do, and
And
you know,
unhappy marriages. And I was going to say as well, I think a lot of these feminists, probably one of the reasons why they formed feminism. Like a lot of them, like Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Betty Friedan herself, Gloria Steinem wasn't married, but a lot of them had either abusive parents or they were in very abusive and unhappy marriages. Like I believe that Friedan was actually in an abusive marriage, and um, a lot of these feminists they had a very unhappy view, and I think of like marriage and of men, and I think this is where feminism actually it comes from. It comes from a very very deep misery within women, because in order to become a a feminist, you've got to be fundamentally, I think, quite an unhappy person. Feminism is a very unhappy philosophy. It's obviously very depressing to go through life thinking I'm being oppressed and men want to oppress me. I mean, it's really a misandry, I would say. Feminism is really a very misandric ideology at its core. And a lot of these feminists, were and are in very unhappy marriages. So it's no wonder they want other women to.
But there's a certain imbalance. So while women feel they are oppressed, I mean, a lot of men feel oppressed by feminism, but they're not allowed to complain. You were saying earlier about all these men who were not, alpha males, and because of that, they won't be able to lead any movement to success, because they are seen as victims of feminism, and for men it doesn't it's not a benefit to be perceived as a victim. It's only women, when they are perceived as victims, that they get special privileges. But for men, they will be scorned, if they said, I'm a victim, I'm a loser, I lost a fight, something bad happened to me, because then women wouldn't find them attractive, and they would be shunned and rejected.
Absolutely. The question of masculinity is such a huge casualty within feminism. And I want to comment as well on alpha male, because I think a lot of people, especially in modern society, and I think a lot of this comes from the romance genre, the definition of an alpha male has really been lost. It's like, for me, especially up until maybe very, very recently, the idea of an alpha male to me is like a man who's very aggressive, who's maybe like a sociopath. And I don't mean that sounds horrible, but I think that people now think that an alpha male or is a man who is like really aggressive and really nasty to women, like Christian Grey from 50 Shades of Grey. Like, this is like a misogynistic sexual predator. Like, this is what an alpha male means now. This is almost what people perceive as being an alpha male. People don't.
Or women perceive that, because I think an alpha male, if you want the anthropological definition, an alpha male is a leader of beta males, right? I mean, that is a definition of a leader. And it's not just some guy that women find attractive because he's such a bad guy, bad boy. He actually has to be a leader, and most serial killers are loners, I guess.
They are, and that's the danger, isn't it? It's like an alpha male is supposed to be a man who is good and who can protect and provide, but people now think it's like people think toxic masculinity is men being masculine. It's actually the opposite. Toxic masculinity is the feminization of men. It's men not being alpha males. Like, imagine if all men became alpha males. Being an alpha male means being in charge. It means being good. It means having good character, being a man of honor, being able to protect and provide. But unfortunately, this is not really the definition as posed in the mainstream romance genre. And I'm saying this because I write romance books. I've seen that a lot of the kinds of men that these women write about, these so-called alpha males that they're fantasizing about, they're actually genuinely bad men. And you're right, the bad boy is somebody that women fantasize about. And I think a lot of women fall into this trap of they fall for a guy who is genuinely bad, who is genuinely abusive, genuinely narcissistic, and then they think that that's what all men are like, and then they start to resent men and say that all men are bad, and it's just becomes a vicious cycle, doesn't it?
Yes, I think what has happened is that a category error has been made, because a man who maybe not very clever women find sexy is not a leader of men, and while I understand that obviously if he's the prime minister or president of a country, he would be technically the alpha male. And there would be reasons.
Alpha male.
Sorry?
Rishi Sunak is definitely not an
Well, technically, if people took him being prime minister seriously, but I think a lot of European national leaders don't actually deserve to be there. They're chosen for a reason, and they're chosen if they are prepared to pretend to be prime minister, but in the background they just unquestioningly follow the orders of Washington, and this is how I believe that European politics is run. And so,
Not to interject, but to keep on going, would you like to keep on asking the questions? I don't want to just ramble on.
oh yeah, I was going to work on the next question, because I think there's some words that are not quite understood, such as alpha male, and I think alpha male, you would have to choose an alpha male properly if you want him to be the leader, and usually he would be a man in middle age, because the idea is that he would already have grown up children, and you can judge his quality as a father and a wife by the quality of grown up children he has. And so if your children are just still at primary school, you shouldn't be the alpha male, because you haven't proven yourself as being able to control your family or lead your family. And if your children turn out bad, then why should anybody trust their country to you? And I think this principle has been lost a long time ago. And so I think that is part of the problem.
Actually, I actually think that a man who is slightly younger, maybe in his 30s, is actually a better leader, because he is more in his prime, and he's more virile and more able to kind of lead. Like, especially if a man say has reached like his mid to late 30s and he's very, very highly accomplished, he's done a lot of things in life. And I don't think that means that he's not fit to be a leader, because actually a man at this age is like younger, and that's when he's got the most energy. Like, men in their 30s have more energy than men in their 50s. So I actually
But they're not as wise.
Well, if they have, good counsel around them, that's where it's important. No leader obviously exists without having counsel. So I think that if a man has good counsel around him, especially counsel.
Are you perhaps also confusing a man you find attractive with a man you want to think of as an alpha male leader? Because I think the rot started with New Labour, because for New Labour there was Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, who was still good looking compared to the Tories, who was John Major and Ken Clarke and John Redwood, if you remember them. Perhaps not, but I don't think any country should be choosing their leader on the basis of their perceived attractiveness to women, to young women.
President Kennedy? Kennedy was a very, very young. He was very attractive to women, but he was also very kind, very measured, diplomatic. I mean, many people have said he was one of the best presidents of the U.S., and he was killed because he was speaking out against the Central Federal Reserve, and wanted to effectively, try and create a new monetary system, as many other leaders before him have done. I was just talking about this with somebody, so it's still fresh in my head. But Kennedy was a pretty good leader, I would say.
Yes, but he was assassinated, some believe, by the CIA because of something to do with the military-industrial complex, and it's not exactly unknown for this to happen, because Roman history has shown that the Praetorian Guard routinely assassinated Roman emperors who didn't do what they wanted. So I think leadership is something very difficult. A lot of people go with the flow, and a lot of leaders go with the flow. And I think feminism is actually a very powerful force. I mean, it is a status quo, and a lot of people have become used to it. And if you want to propose anything different, there is this sort of a lot of inertia, shall we say. So unless somebody at the top wants to push this forward, it will be difficult, because it will be silenced, you'll be ignored and demonized and mocked, and it's not like, if you have a good idea, somebody will be prepared to listen and promote it. It's whether, the powers that be, want to promote your idea or not. And I think feminism is now such a sacred cow that it becomes almost impossible to question it unless you do it through something very powerful, such as a religion.
Cool. Do you want to ask the next question?
And the next question would be, well, I mean, what is your philosophy exactly? That is different to, say the MGTOWs and the men's rights activists that you already know. Do you have a new idea that is different to theirs?
Yeah, so women's advocacy, it's really the non-feminist alternative to female empowerment. And we effectively advocate that women and men should work together and support each other, and that women should love and cherish their womanhood rather than view it as oppression. So I wouldn't really say it's a political philosophy. Like, I'm not out here trying to be a politician. I'm a writer, I'm an artist, I'm a thinker. I'm effectively trying to pose a philosophy that is something that can actually teach women, for example, loving your femininity, loving being a woman, a real love of womanhood. Because right now, especially with this transgender ideology, there seems to be a big hatred of womanhood. A lot of women are becoming men. A lot of women, especially modern women, are very angry, very tired, very frustrated, very, very psychologically, emotionally exhausted. And there just seems to be this collective sadness in the West, particularly women of my generation, I say 20s and 30s most particularly. Perhaps even women in their 40s or 50s who perhaps are divorced. It's like there isn't a sense of female camaraderie. Like, there is no women's movement. There's feminism, and even feminism itself is so fragmented. But there's no women's movement. There isn't really a female philosophy. There isn't really anything that talks about being a good wife, being a good woman, all the traits that make women, really, really lovely. The idea of feminine excellence, like, for example, what are the good qualities of being a woman? Being graceful, being kind, being caring, being compassionate, empathetic, nurturing, agreeable. If you think of like a Disney princess, I know that's a very idealistic notion, but the idea of a woman as being someone who's kind, like most men, when it comes to choosing a wife, for example, kindness is a really, really key trait. And a lot of modern women now, because feminism has inspired, this misandry towards men, this hatred towards men. And just while we're on the topic as well, I think I should define feminism. So feminism is a social and political ideology that claims that women are an oppressed social class under a patriarchal society, and that women must liberate ourselves from the patriarchy through the destruction of gender roles. And that definition, that idea of women being liberated from the patriarchy, that's what people don't understand. A lot of people think feminism is equal rights or women being equal to men, and it's not, especially if you talk to real feminists, i.e. radical feminists or intersectional feminists. The patriarchy theory and the destruction of gender roles. And what I'm trying to say is, no, we need to save gender roles. We need men to be masculine. We need men to, follow masculine excellence. And we need women to follow feminine excellence. The idea of being a feminine woman, being in your feminine energy, being graceful. Because I think women really aren't allowed to feel feminine anymore. And I think women feel much happier when they're being feminine. Like, even it sounds silly, but like, I feel much more like a woman because I'm wearing a dress and I have lipstick on. And I know that sounds really silly, but there is a psychological difference. A woman being able to wear a dress versus wearing jeans and a t-shirt. Like, there is a psychological difference. I think that fundamentally women would be much happier if they were able to dress and look women rather than like men, effectively, which is how a lot of modern women feel.
Yes, this unisex idea has been around for a long time. I know we're only recently complaining about unisex toilets, but unisex clothes has been around for quite a while. It's the idea that where men and women wear jeans and t-shirt and all the kinds of things and shell suits and all that. When I guess in previous generations there were sex distinctions for in so many ways, and even entrances and exits, and that would kind of make people more prepared to fulfill their gender their gender roles, which now they refuse to do, which is why we get, all this gender dysphoria. People thinking, well, I feel like a man, not like a woman, or vice versa. And I think when people married, or when most people married, they were prepared to perform their gender roles because they saw it as a way of attracting a mate.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yes.
And that's really the core, isn't it? It's like when you destroy gender roles, you destroy that natural harmony between men and women. It's like a man is attracted to a woman's femininity. Like there's a reason, for example, why dresses they bring out on a woman's body shape, that elegance, that hourglass figure. That is what a man finds attractive. And in the same way as like a woman, what's attractive? What do women really fantasize about? Men wearing suits. Like most women swoon over men wearing suits. Like blazers, nice shirts, trousers. Like this is way more attractive than a man wearing a tracksuit. Like a man in like jogging bottoms is nowhere near as attractive than a man who's dressed in like a suit, who's got like a blazer on, who's got a shirt on. Like these subtle things do make a difference. And there was a time, like I think of the 1950s, for example, when you had that kind of old Hollywood ideal. You had that men wearing hats and coats, and the women wearing nice dresses, like Marilyn Monroe, and Rita Hayworth, and Vivian Leigh. Like this was this idea of glamour, of people dressing in this way that was really about highlighting ladies and gentlemen. It does make a difference psychologically, and it makes people feel more attractive and more attractive to each other, because we say we want men and women to be attracted to each other, fall in love, find a mate, get married, and be happy. And we really need to have that. And I think that when you destroy gender roles, you always destroy attraction. It's like most women want a man who's dominant. They want a man to take charge. And most women, especially women of my age and my female friends, are not happy. Like, to go to my book as well, The Rational Female, I'm talking about this a lot, how a lot of young women do feel the men they're with are not masculine. They don't feel like they're dominant. They don't feel like they're in charge. They don't feel like they're being swept off their feet. They don't feel that sense. And I think that maybe a lot of men feel that as well. They don't feel like their girlfriends are being caring. They don't feel like their girlfriends are being nurturing. They feel like they're very bitchy. And this all comes from a destruction of gender roles. I'd like to just as well, just the whole old Hollywood thing. I'm just using that as an example. I'm not, but it's just I just use that as an example of say femininity and masculinity.
Yes, I mean, obviously, if we perceive each other to be different, then we will respect each other's differences. But if we behave exactly as each other, then we'll just end up competing with each other. And that, I think, is a problem of feminism, because if you're saying men and women are equal, then they can behave in exactly the same way as each other, and they will end up behaving in the worst way of the other sex, rather than, in the best way of their own sex. And then they'll end up hating each other and not getting married and not having children. And, so I think because people don't feel they need to marry in order to have sex, they're just not that bothered about gender roles. I think this is linked to why men and women don't feel they need to perform their gender roles anymore, because they can still they can still have sex without getting married. And I think this is fundamentally the issue that a lot of people don't want to admit, that gender roles is only useful for people who are looking for a spouse. And if we're looking for a spouse because we want to be, we want to feel that at least somebody marries us, and we have the right to have children. Somebody wants to have children with us, and really traditionally the marriage license is licensing men and women who are married to each other to have sex and children with each other. And now it's a free-for-all. And I think that is fundamentally the problem of people not respecting gender roles and the sex differences, and not getting married. I think, and this has been caused by the attitudes propagated by feminism, such as gender equality, and this idea that gender is a social construct.
Well, I actually think your idea of saying that sex requires people should have a contract, a licensed contract to have sex is very dangerous, and this actually is not something I support. I don't think that people should have to feel they have to contract to have sex, and that doesn't really fit into my philosophy. My philosophy is for
But
me,
sex is very dangerous.
well,
It is, isn't it? You could get knocked up by somebody horrible.
well, sex positivity is actually a part of my general view, and I think that most young people, especially of my generation, don't really like the idea of like sex being used as a bargaining chip, especially by women. Because actually, in the past, for example, women would say, "Oh, get into marriage," and then what would happen is that men would get married with a woman, and a lot of men would then go and cheat on the woman they were with. They go to prostitutes because, and I know you support licensed prostitution. I don't. I don't support prostitution. The reason for this is because I think this actually divides women into being the wife, and what ends up happening is you end up with the man who he marries the girl he perceives as a good girl because she doesn't put out, and then he cheats on her with the woman he perceives as the bad girl, i.e. the whore, and both the wife and the whore resent each other. And I actually think this is a massive problem, especially with a lot of modern women on YouTube, on the internet. A lot of women seem to be struggling with this. I would describe as a very unresolved Madonna whore complex, which is where you have these women who think they want to, control and delay sex versus women who are having sex very easily. And my view of sex is that I think we should teach people that sex should be about bonding. So, for example, you meet somebody, you like each other, and you have sex as part of the relationship. And then, like I would say that I think you should have sex before marriage, actually, because I think it's actually very important to have a physical connection with the person you're going to marry. And I think that, if we have a society where sex is viewed as part of a romantic relationship, then people will date and fall in love and have sex as part of the relationship, and that will be very natural. And then they'll get married, after say 1 or 2 years. But I think that if we tell people wait until you're married, a lot of people might get married just to have sex, and then that can actually cause
and then be stuck with each other, which is kind of the idea, though, isn't it?
Exactly, but that's actually that's not romantic. That's actually, it's like a bargaining chip. It's like a
yes. It's like you break, you buy.
Because a lot of women as well, are very physical, and for a lot of women, sex is tied to romance, and a lot of women do want to have sex with the men they love and do want to fall in love and have sex with the man they're with. So, no, I completely disagree with this idea of making people wait until marriage. I think that, for me, again, sex...
Well, I mean, I see the difficulty, and actually I do sympathise with the opposition, but I'm saying that if you take this attitude, then a lot of unscrupulous men will regard it as a free test drive. So they never commit. It's like any woman, he just sort of makes himself pleasant to her. She'll want to have sex with him, and he never has to marry them.
That's
and he can go on doing this for the rest of his life.
With women they love, a lot of men are very happy to fall in love with a woman and have sex with her and then marry her. And I think that this idea that men are just dogs who just sleep with a woman, I mean, it's what you're effectively claiming is that if a man is interested in the woman and wants to have sex with her, he has no interest in marrying her, which again comes from the Madonna whore complex, which is identified by Sigmund Freud, which is this idea that men are incapable of... It's almost as if you're effectively claiming that men are incapable of loving a woman they're sexually attracted to, and on the flip side, men are incapable of... If a woman is sexually attracted to a woman, then he is not going to want to, what's the word I'm looking for, marry her. So what I'm effectively saying is no, instead of telling people to wait until marriage, and likewise having prostitution, we get rid of prostitution, and we also get rid of no sex till marriage, and we say no, sex is part of love. Sex and love are intertwined, that you meet somebody, you have a romantic connection with them. Like, I was thinking to myself, what if all women decided to only sleep with men they were romantically attracted to? And slowly casual sex would start out, and sex would all be really... sex would be viewed as for relationships. You meet someone, you like them, you have a relationship, and that's what sex would be about. That's really my general philosophy regarding sexuality.
But people fall out of love with each other. They might be madly in love or...
That's okay. Well, not everybody necessarily is going to marry the first person they fall in love with, but the point is that if sex is primarily for relationships, and people have sex within relationships, because as well, you might meet somebody, you might fall for them, but something might go wrong, and that's normal, that's natural. It's not necessarily wrong to, assume that if a woman or a man meet together and say, especially if you're very young as well, you don't have a lot of life experience, like, you people marry the first person that they are in a relationship with.
Well, it would be bad. That's why the family is important, to say, oh, I approve of him or her, and you get them to meet your friends and family, and
Yes,
and they.
ideally, of course. But as well, people do take time as well, especially for example, younger people like teenagers, they will often meet, say, when they're like young, and maybe they might think, oh yes, I'm going to marry this person, but then maybe somewhere down the road something might go wrong. I'm just trying to be realistic. I'm trying to paint a more realistic.
I'm also trying to be realistic, because
I
ultimately,
don't think it's rather realistic at all. Well, I think that the vast majority of people view your view of telling women that they shouldn't have sex outside of marriage, and that women with high sex drives should work in licensed brothels. I think a lot of women would genuinely find that very insulting, and I think that most women would view that as, well, no, I don't want to wait until marriage, but I don't want to be a prostitute either. Why are those my only two options?
well, because you see, this is a problem. If women were told, like, if you want to have sex with men, you can either give them wife sex or give them prostitute sex, and obviously most women will say, well, I want to give them wife sex, I want to be married, and that's
I think that's
higher status.
disgusting.
Sorry, what? I didn't hear that.
Genuinely disgusting view of sex. That's literally what I'm against. And I think a lot of women would agree with me. A lot of women don't want to be the wife, and they don't want to be the whore. They want to be a woman who meets a
They
man.
want to be the woman in the middle, who is not neither prostitute nor wife. But I'm saying this is actually the largest group of
I
women
think most women,
that men can pump and dump.
I think
They
most women
do.
a goody two shoes wife, or they don't want to be a whore either. This is a genuine problem that was identified by Sigmund Freud. A lot of men genuinely struggled because, as well, what Freud identified was that a lot of men who were married were struggling to be attracted to their wives and were literally cheating on them with prostitutes. Because one of the questions which I asked myself is, why, I actually asked this when I was on Just Pelly thing, why would prostitution be a need if all men were in sexually satisfying marriages? If every man was in a relationship and then getting married to a girl who he loved, because women obviously don't want to be cheated on, and a lot of men cheat. And I think that the reason why a lot of men cheat is partially because a lot of women do have this unresolved Madonna Hawks. A woman sees herself as either too pure and chaste or too much of a whore. And what I'm effectively trying to bring about, which I think would resonate with a lot of women, especially young women of my age and my generation, is that instead of teaching women you're either a good girl who has to make a man wait X amount of times, who has to use your sexuality to bargaining chip, or you're a bad girl who's like a whore or an OnlyFans girl. I'm against OnlyFans as well, by the way. We say, no, 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 all women are women. You're a whole woman. You are a woman. You're a good woman of moral character. And you are also sexual. And your sexuality is for the guy or guys that you are in a romantic connection with. That's really what I'm saying.
But I mean, surely, lots of people have sex with people that they're attracted to, and then they fall all out of love with them. And now it's become increasingly difficult for women to get men to marry them. Because men think, well, I don't have to marry them. Why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free? I'll just carry on, claiming my free test drives.
No, I think what you're referring to is casual sex, which again is a very extreme, because the extreme of no sex outside of marriage versus the extreme of everybody sleep with everybody, these are two extremes. I've been trying to say this repeatedly to many people on the internet, and I don't think I sound particularly unreasonable, but what you're actually talking is this modern overall liberalization of sex, and I agree. I think it's very, very unhealthy for young women to just go out and sleep with loads and loads of men. Having engaged in this lifestyle myself, I think I can turn around and say, well, no, this is actually very harmful for many of the women of my age. And this is what I'm trying to say, is that instead, which is I'm going to talk about in my book as well, instead of women sleeping with a man for the sake of it, for a hookup or for a one night stand, instead, a woman, I think young women should make it a rule: only sleep with a man if you are romantically interested in him, and do this early on so you can form a romantic connection. Ask him what his intentions are. Be very blunt. Say, I'm looking for a boyfriend. I'm not looking for casual sex. I think this will actually help a lot of young women of my age. Because remember as well, like, I know you're a bit older than me, and forgive me for saying this, but many older women who talk about casual sex, with all due respect, none of you really know anything about the lifestyle. None of you really have any, or you're talking to a generation of women where this has been the norm, where this has been a lifestyle, and you're not going to get through to young women by saying to them, wait until marriage, or wait 2,
No,
3 months.
I know, I know. I'm certainly not claiming
About
to be.
the general narrative, and I'm saying this as a young woman who has actually engaged in the lifestyle of casual sex. It's far more realistic to turn around and say to ladies, okay, instead of having one as casual sex, what about we say, right, sex is for relationships. You meet a guy and you like him and you fall in love, and that should be our new sexual standard. I think that's a much more realistic standard. I think that's a standard which would resonate with a lot of modern women in the West, especially around my age.
Well, yes, but it's not practical when you say, "Oh, okay, I want to be your boyfriend for the week, for the month, for the year, for 2 years." I
That's
mean,
not right.
really, it's got to be for keeps. Otherwise, you give this loophole for the man to say, "Well, I was your boyfriend. Now, I want another girlfriend."
It's not what I'm saying, Claire. A lot
I
of
know
people
it's not what you're saying, but this
that
kind of
think that it's going
engagement
and
gives men the ability to never commit, to
that's
your detriment, to the detriment of women like you, because they just think, well, why should I commit? I might find somebody younger and more attractive round the corner. There's no need for me to commit. And it kind of destroys it for them because they think I can just keep. There's actually a dating website called Plenty of
I
Fish
think
in the
that most
Sea.
things are things to be clear.
I'm sorry, the
It goes
sound is not. Okay, I can't really hear you, but okay. I'm just saying you're kind of spoiling the market for yourself. But we can move on to the next topic if you think.
well, I was
It,
gonna just yeah, right, that's cool.
but um, so the next subtopic is we've got lots. Maybe we won't even do this in one session.
That's cool.
Um, who will lead this new women's movement? I guess you are.
Well, yes, because again, like as I was trying to say, and you know, yeah, yeah. Because the thing is, the reason why this is such a big thing for me is I really do think the resolution between the Madonna and the whore, the good girl and the bad girl, you could say the light and the dark feminine, is something which I don't really see anyone genuinely trying to solve. It's like a lot of people partake in slut shaming. They constantly put down women for being overly sexual, but nobody's trying to actually come along and like find a much healthier middle ground. Because I think most women on the whole don't want to wait until they're married. It's like, no, I like this guy, I want to be together. And with all due respect, like you can be in a relationship with a guy and it doesn't work out, but that doesn't mean it like most people don't get into relationships thinking that it's going to end. Most people meet someone, they fall for each other, and the relationship ends maybe after 2 or 3 years, but that doesn't mean the relationship was a failure. This is just a realistic part of life. Like it's actually quite common. And I actually think it's much healthier, say, because I'm 26, right? Had
Hmm.
all a lot of guys, very, very blunt about that. It'd be much healthier if I was 26 years old. I'd had maybe like 2 or 3 committed boyfriends, and those relationships didn't work out for whatever reason. And then I meet my husband. Like that's much more healthy and much, I think, safer for a woman of my age than having a history of, oh, I've been with all these guys. And the reality is that for most of women of my generation in the West, the reality is I have a history of all these guys rather than, I mean, I think I'm a bit extreme. I think most girls my age, the average probably maybe like 10 or 12 guys, I think on average. That's what I perceive anyway.
Hmm.
But most women, if women, instead of having all these casual relationships, if you'd have been like, okay, so the guys I've slept with are maybe 2 or 3 committed boyfriends. They didn't work out. Maybe we were young. Maybe things just didn't work out. And then now I meet my husband at like 25 or 24 or whatever. I'm just again
Hmm.
trying to be realistic about the way in which society is generally is right now and about the way in which women are.
Yes, and now I assume you are looking for a husband. Do you have any kind of attributes you would like your husband to have?
Well, it's funny actually because in the Rational Female, I talk about what women should look for in husbands. I've been in 2 relationships with men I thought I was going to marry. One of the biggest problems when it comes to finding a husband or a wife is that people don't know it's someone who matches their temperament or their personality. If you are a certain way, for example, if I'm a very, very, very free, outgoing, and ambitious woman, most guys, like, this is also because a lot of people are very, very unfair. if you're a very ambitious woman, finding a suitable husband is going to be harder because women who are very, very ambitious and very driven and very go-getting are by default going to want a man who is also like that. And again, because of the suppression of masculinity, because most men of my generation are not alpha males, it's going to be much harder for you to meet a guy and settle because you're going to get frustrated with him. He's going to be really useless. It's like if I talk to most men, not even in my like in the 20, even the 30s, and I say I've published 20 books, it's just like he looks at himself. He's like, well, what have I done? And it's not in a not that he's intimidated. I was trying to explain this actually to a lady at Speaker's Corner last week when I was saying to her, like, statistically, women who earn more than men, or women who are more successful than the man they're with, the man tends to feel insecure, and it's like the women tend to be unhappy. So, generally speaking, the more ambitious and the more driven a woman is. So, people really need to fundamentally, when it comes to choosing a life partner, they need to look at themselves and think realistically what would work for me. Like, what kind of person am I? What kind of life do I want? Like, if you're a girl, for example, if you want to say be a housewife, then you find you find a guy who can provide for you, who can protect you, who has a good job. If you're a girl who wants to live a life of traveling, you need to find a guy who also wants that. If you're a girl who's very, very, very ambitious, it's going to stand to point that you're going to need a man who is also very, very ambitious, and he's going to need to be even more of an ambitious, fiery go-getter than you are. Otherwise, you're going to just look at the guy you're with and just be frustrated all the time and just think, oh, why am I seeing him working my arse off trying to conquer the world and he's just, smoking tobacco and whatever. Like this
or worse.
Yeah.
So have you had any experience of dating apps, and would you like to give us your recommendations? And
Yeah, I've used dating apps a lot. I mean, my dating history is very, 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 very well. I think I have a very common experience of modern dating for a woman of my age who's grown up in the West, and I think that regarding dating, it's very, very, very hard. And I think the main reason why it's hard is because why was dating so hard for me? Because I wasn't really being realistic. I should have looked at myself and gone, well, I'm a very ambitious, driven woman. I need to find a man who's also very ambitious and driven. Rather falling for any guy because he's there. I don't want to talk too much about myself as well because it's a bit depressing. But
yes. Well, I was actually talking about the dating apps themselves rather than your dating experiences necessarily.
The purpose of dating apps should be to find a partner. Like a lot of people do meet on apps and they get married, like with Match or eHarmony. A lot of people do genuinely meet online and they get married. So I don't know. I'm not against dating apps. If they work for people, they work for people.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite one, or one that you hate, or whatever?
I don't know. Bumble was okay, I suppose, but again,
Bumble is the one that the men don't. The men wait to be asked. Is that the one?
Yeah, a lot of women like Bumble because on most dating apps, men just send you rubbish, whereas on Bumble, the woman messages. But for me, again, dating apps, like I don't know, but I don't want to go on about dating apps really.
Right. No, but I think it. We don't have to know anything about your personal details, but I just find obviously all these apps are kind of money making machines for these people, and they have some gimmicky new idea, and then then it doesn't work, and then they have a new one, and the cycle starts again. When I guess perhaps the old fashioned way is to have a matchmaker. Or I guess for these Muslims, it's like they really set you up. You join their mosque after you've converted, and then they kind of set you up. It's like do you want to get married? We'll find somebody. We know to be single. It's only a tenner. Sorry.
A dating app is almost like a form of a matchmaker because a matchmaker, the app is used. How shall I say? To bring people with certain characteristics together. And you have like Muslim dating apps, Christian dating apps. So I don't think dating apps are bad, but again, I think dating apps should be for the purpose of finding a partner. I think we should get rid of this culture of hooking up and of casual sex. I think we should phase that out.
They should be marriage bureaus, right? They should be marriage bureaus, and it's like dating. No more dating apps. You can only join us if you actually want to get married. Otherwise, you can you can just screw around using something else, and that would concentrate people's minds. Like, well, okay, well then what am I looking for in my husband? What have I got to offer? What's the best I can do? Etc. etc. And that would be, I think, better than having dating apps that offer you options like casual or long term or marriage or undecided or whatever. And because there's so many options, people waste a lot of time and energy and money and end up being embittered when really all they wanted to do, if they want to look back on their lives, is to lead a settled life and get on with whatever they were supposed to be doing, and do it sooner rather than later, so they can get all these things out of their way. I suppose that is really the thing, and I think for women, women in their 20s are just more likely to get a better kind of husband than a woman in her 30s. We have a biological clock. And
Yeah.
I think the problem with women is that they get fussier as they get older. In fact, when they should be more, I guess all things considered, more tolerant, but women get fussier as they get older.
Sure. Cool. Would you like to?
And they can spot bullshit quicker than the young ones. And they're not prepared to put up with crap. And so I don't know. I mean, I suppose the olden days is that, men and women were expected to choose young, choose early, and choose only once. And that was the rule. No,
We're not in those days anymore, are we? I'm trying to be
well, we can
realistic.
turn back time by changing the law. I mean,
Don't
that's
change in such a radical way. Things usually take more time. That's what I'm trying to say. Is like taking things one step at a time is more realistic than just randomly expecting the whole world to just change overnight.
right. Okay,
Okay.
we can move on to the next question. Do you consider yourself right wing?
No, I don't follow any political faction.
Okay, but you were saying you didn't want left wing women to be part of your women's movement, or did I misunderstand?
Well, I'm against Marxism because feminism is built on Marxist concepts, but I want my movement or my philosophy to be accessible to as many women as possible. So
Okay,
I'm not trying to exclude anyone. It's just the idea of that it's a very non political ideology.
and you were talking about your philosophy. You have a universal philosophy. What do you mean by you just want lots of people to like it?
So
That's what you mean.
philosophy is inspired mainly by the divine feminine and by my worship of a goddess whom I pray to, the Egyptian cat goddess. And this reverence for goddesses and for the divine and for the divine feminine is a big part. And that's why I talk about sexuality, because sexuality is a very big part of that. And I think the approach to feminine sexuality, moving away from this Madonna whore dichotomy to a more balanced, a more tick view of sexuality, can really, really help women. But I would say my general philosophy is very, very spiritually inspired. It's inspired by my spirituality. My worldview is pantheistic, so I believe in oneness and I believe in the divine feminine and the divine masculine, and that these are two complementary forces that come together, like yin and yang or whatever, and that, you know, masculinity, the dominant, that kind of dominant, Mars energy, that warrior, fighter, go-getter energy is complemented by, Venus. I mean, and from Mars, moving from Venus, like we think of Venus of being, creativity, femininity, elegance, being soft, being caring, being graceful, being gentle, and being, sexual with your man. That is really where my philosophy is inspired. It's inspired by the divine feminine. I think of feminism as being a very undivine, ungodly ideology. My ideology is being a much more godly, goddess inspired idea. Like, I do have to give a lot of, attributes to that because, the goddess whom I pray to, whom I revere very much, I do give reverence to her. And I think that this idea of bringing out something that is going to help women, help lift the spirit of women, help lift that feminine spirit and restore that sense of feminine excellence back into women. And again, like if you look at goddesses, like statues of goddesses and pictures of them, they're always dressed really beautifully. They have their health. They always look so, like, beauty is such an important part of womanhood and feminism as well. Like Naomi Wolf, called beauty a patriarchal construct. It's like all of these, it's like everything about being womanly, because like physical asceticism is a very, very feminine thing. Like that's why women are so obsessed with our looks. It's actually not, there's actually a very, very good psychological underpinning for that. Women like to look good. Beauty was always celebrated, and female beauty, like if you look at these old Renaissance or medieval paintings of beautiful women, being beautiful and celebrating female beauty and the female aesthetic, the feminine aesthetic, this is very, very good. And that's why I think pornography is quite bad. That's why I think pornography and prostitution and OnlyFans, I do wonder if maybe we need to get rid of them, because they turn the female body and female sexuality into this very vulgar and unhealthy commodity. It's like pornography, for example, rather than celebrating the feminine body, rather than viewing women as being beautiful, like a goddess or a princess or a woman that you revere, pornography turns the female body into something that can just be used, and it really vulgarizes women. And it's like the kind of overly vulgar, liberal inspired model of modern female sexuality, I think, is quite unhealthy. Again, it was a this Madonna whore dichotomy.
Yes. So do you will you be consulting men on the kind of women that they want?
Men on the kind of women that they want. Well, my book is aimed at women. I mean, it's quite interesting and ironic because right now most of the people I find who support me, my anti-feminism, are men. I understand why.
Because they find you attractive.
Well, the thing is that being a very attractive woman actually inspires. Like, if a very attractive woman is saying feminism is trash, that actually does something psychologically to men. And that's not me. Like, I don't really think that I would be having, if I'm an attractive plain girl, or if I was wearing a burqa or something, it wouldn't be having the same effect. Like, I'm just being very realistic. And women also tend to look to women who are very desirable. It's like a woman who's very, very desirable and who knows how to be desirable to men is going to garner a lot more attention, because other women are going to look to her and go, oh, all these men are looking at her. That's much better than, say, looking at a porn star or looking at an angry feminist. And that's not me trying to be like in any kind, that's just me being genuinely realistic. Women as a rule tend to follow, because again, women know the value of feminine beauty, and a very, very, we have these very unattractive or very, very plain or very, very unfeminine woman. A woman who knows how to be attractive in a way that's appropriate, in a way that's subtle, in a way that's sensual, who's also intelligent, who's well spoken and who thinks well, is going to garner a lot more, long term, because that's just women think. Like the popular women are usually the ones who are very, very desirable to men. That's just me pointing this out as a realistic fact. I think feminine energy, well, men should be fundamentally in their masculine energy and women fundamentally in their feminine energy, but women do have a bit of masculine energy. Like the ability to be very ambitious is a masculine thing. Like masculine, like sorry if I'm going on a tangent here, but a woman uses her masculine energy when she's working hard, when she's being ambitious, in the same way that a man uses his feminine energy when he wants to be more, say if he's with his children, if he's being very caring and gentle with his children, he's being more in his feminine energy. So I think that if we say on the whole, a woman is like, I don't know, 60 to 70% of the time in her feminine energy, and then maybe 30 to 40% of the time in her masculine energy, the same goes for men. I think the problem with feminism and with this whole gender social construction thing is that it's trying to say men should act more like women rather than being a man who also is slightly in touch with the feminine side. It's now trying to really, really destroy that. So I think by nature, men and women tend to defer to gender roles quite well. I think by nature, women tend to be more feminine and men tend to be more masculine. And then we also have a bit of our countersexual energy inappropriate situations, if that makes sense.
Well, yes, I think men have to kind of display themselves. I mean, in the animal kingdom, it's the cocks that are, attractive, like the peacock, and the peahen is very plain, and she's
Yeah.
just there to, survey the goods and choose the one she wants. And it's a men who do all the running and, put on displays and all that. And I suppose about, feminine and masculine energy, it seems to me that women are about not telling the men directly what to do, like, trying to subtly hint to the man that, she wants something to be done without saying, you have to remember my birthday or there will be trouble. She has to sort of give gentle reminders and, that sort of thing, because it would spoil the whole thing if she were to just give him orders. So,
Absolutely. Subtlety and gentleness is a big part of being a feminine woman. It's like, for example, if men are fundamentally leaders, fundamentally the dominant force, and the wife is fundamentally the softer force, but think about it, you know, it's almost like a lot of married men will say, "Oh, I'm in charge, but my wife really is in charge." Like in the background, it's like even though the man is the one who's in charge, he's Mr. Dominant, he's Mr. Man. He looks at his wife and goes, "Is that okay, honey?" Like this is actually a very fundamental dynamic, I think, of men and women. I think that people forget that while men may be outwardly the dominant force, the leaders, that's why men are taller and stronger and bigger, which of course they should be. They should be dominant. Women are still, it's like, for example, a woman can set the tone. Like, a woman has the power to look at a man and say, you're an arsehole or you're brilliant. Like, if a woman is standing next to her husband and she goes, wow, everybody, look at this guy, he's great, he's fantastic. If she's standing there cheering him on, especially if she's a very attractive woman, everybody is going to perceive him as being more desirable. And that adds a level of social status to him. That's why a lot of these rich and powerful men have this idea of the trophy wife. It's like very, very, and that's what I was talking again about the power of feminine beauty. Like, I don't talk about these things that sound shallow. I talk about them because they're genuinely a part of our collective human psyche. Very powerful men tend to have attractive women because attractive women.
Bimbos. Did you know the expression bimbo?
Well, a bimbo is a woman who's very attractive but also very stupid.
But I think that's what men want.
No,
They
I
want,
don't think
a woman who doesn't, who's not always arguing with him about this or that, and that's what they want.
No, an
Easily
intelligent
controlled, it's like, oh, you're so wonderful, you've just done these things.
because you see, a
Thank
woman who is
you.
intelligent is going to be much better because you see, a woman who is intelligent. First of all, if you're married to someone, especially for a long time, you need to be able to talk to them. Like, this is something men talk about a lot. It's like, oh, I can't talk to her. Like, a lot of, if you're going to be married to someone for 40, 50 years, you need to be able to converse with them. So, no, I don't think any man, again, I don't think a man wants a plain girl who knows a lot or a woman who's very pretty but stupid. I think, again, these are extreme. I think most women want a girl who's nice looking, who's presentable, takes care of her appearance, and who also thinks, can talk, and know things. I think that that's what most men would like. I mean, I'm not a man, I can't speak for men, but generally speaking, I don't think a man wants to marry a bimbo at all. I think actually, and also think about it, a bimbo, especially if the man himself is intelligent, a bimbo would make him look stupid, because if a man's wife is pretty but stupid, other people are going to laugh at him. Whereas if she's pretty but she's also smart, she can carry a conversation, he can take her to business functions. Like, these are the kind of realistic things. A man who's in a
Have you read a novel called The Stepford Wives?
Of course, yes, Claire. No man wants a Stepford wife. This is what I was saying.
Are you sure? I mean, sex bots are very popular now. I mean, it seems that every incel wants one.
Stepford wife. This is what I was trying to say. I'm like, man wants a Stepford wife. A man wants a woman who is, again, nice looking, takes care of her physical appearance, but who he can also talk to, share his dreams with. Because again, the whole point of marriage is that you're supposed to be partners in life. You're supposed to be team players. Like, I can't see why a man would want a girl who is completely and utterly stupid. Like, a lot of guys have said this to me as well. They're like, oh, she's boring, I couldn't talk to her. I've heard guys say this many, many times over the years. Like, oh yeah, she's pretty, but we got nothing to talk about. Oh, she's boring. Oh, we can't talk to her. What not to talk about? What not to talk about? Like, You know,
Are there any men that we might have heard of that you find attractive? I mean, any celebrities, like actors, I don't know, personalities,
I
do,
love
do you find any, who?
Kit Harington. He plays Jon Snow in Game of Thrones.
Oh, right, I don't know that one. I don't
Yeah,
know. Kit
Jon.
Harington, you say?
Yeah,
Okay, and he
which
played.
man? I love Game of Thrones.
Oh, right, okay, I didn't see that.
See, I love them because like they're men, like kind and gentle, but they're also manly.
Well, it's this sort of dichotomy you talk about, men wanting a whore in the bedroom and an angel in the kitchen. Unfortunately, the women might not,
Yeah.
these qualities might not exist in one person.
No, but they do. That's exactly it. It's not, you're not an angel or you're a whore. You're an angel in a lady in appropriate situations, and then you're a whore in private situations. That is exactly it.
So, Khalid is asking if there are any qualities that what modern women are missing that is making their relationships fail.
I think one of the biggest qualities is a lack of empathy for men, definitely, because feminism really is, again, a form of misogyny. It doesn't inspire women to want to care about or, respect men or care about men's feelings at all. So I think that because modern women have this very antagonistic attitude towards men, like a lot of women, they don't want to cook for their man, they don't want to be. It's like basic things like if a guy comes home from work and he's tired, he wants his girl to be kind, he wants her to go, "Are you okay?" Because it's very hard to be a man. Like again, this idea of the woman being the gentler force. Like if a man is going out in the world and he's dealing with problems all day, he wants to come home and be with a woman who's kind. Like kindness is such a. I almost think kindness in modern society among modern women is such an underrated quality. Like I look at a lot, especially a lot of these women on the internet. A lot of these trans women, a lot of them are very unkind. Like Pearl, she's very very unkind. Like kindness is an underrated quality, and most men want a woman who is kind in the same way that most women want a man who is, daring and brave and strong and gallant. It's that whole thing of the complementarianism, the whole thing of the dominant masculine force wanting the softer, gentler feminine force. And kindness is a strength. Like it takes a lot to be a kind person. Like it's hard to be kind to people, especially in the horrible world that we live in. Being kind to people, having manners. So, for example, I disagree with a lot of things you say. I still hope that I'm being kind to you. I do try and go out of my
You are certainly civil, and I do appreciate that, and it's great that we can have a civil exchange of views.
I mean, I love talking to people who think differently from me because also, like, you have to challenge people and be challenged on your views because that's how, like, free speech is all being destroyed, isn't it? Like, we need free speech. That's why we need, a different exchange of ideas.
Yeah, and we need sometimes to be kind of put in the spot by somebody who doesn't agree with us to make us refine our ideas and choose our words better and maybe even acknowledge that our ideas don't really work, and that I think is more healthy, and perhaps women are less able to do that than men because they have more feelings to be hurt, or their feelings are more sensitive, and maybe if they're pretty, then people will just want to protect them against their feelings being hurt. Well, if it's just a man's feelings being hurt, they just tell him to man up. So
Exactly. That's where, if a man in public out in the world is being told to, man up or whatever, when he goes home, he wants his wife to cuddle him and be caring and gentle. Like, I mean, I'm noticed from being around my brother, like, my brother and I are very close. It's like, as the man, he might be, stressed and tired, he's working on his music, but then when he's with, me, his sister, there's that sweetness. Like, women offer sweetness and warmth and compassion. This is something which women offer to men. This is again, people really, I think feminism has really, really negated that actually. It's like, that sweetness and warmth. This is not weak. Like, people think that being sweet and nurturing and caring means that you're weak. It's not. It's a strength to be sweet and caring. And, that doesn't mean that you're a walkover. It doesn't mean that you are, how shall I say, that you don't have any backbone. Like, obviously, all women need to have a backbone. You need to be assertive. You need to stand your ground. Like, you need to be strong. Like, don't get me wrong. I think women should be strong. That's why I actually think feminism is making women weak, because it teaches women they're victims. I think, no, women, you need to believe that you're strong. Like being feminine means being strong. It doesn't mean thinking you're oppressed. It means thinking, no, I'm a feminine woman. I have a lot to offer the world. I can pursue my passions. I can choose what I want to do with my life, and also be realistic about wanting to find a husband someday. And yeah.
Yes, and you mentioned Pearl a few minutes ago. Would you like to tell us a bit more about her? I guess she has to make a point, and because it's a political point, a lot of people are going to find what she says offensive and have their feelings hurt. Do you not think she's doing something useful by perhaps being, too blunt? But maybe these things need to be said because so many people still don't get it.
I mean, I don't want to go give her too much of my time, but I will say I think she's a very dangerous role model for young women because she's a very unkind person, and she's also very, very unattractive to men. She doesn't really know how to be, like, men don't find her attractive on the whole. Good men don't find someone like her attractive. She doesn't inspire that desirability because she's not a kind person. She's not sweet. She's not feminine. She doesn't even dress well. Like, I'm not, like, she's pretty, obviously, but I'm saying her personality. She doesn't have an attractive personality on the whole.
Yes, I think I know what you mean. But
yeah, and that's quite sad. Like, I'll be honest, I actually feel quite sorry for her. I don't know, but I don't want to give her too much of my time.
But you've been on her show, haven't you?
Yeah, and we all know how she treated me, and I think that it just makes her look quite pathetic, because if she finds, like, female competitiveness is a very common thing, and it's like, I don't really, I know women are fundamentally in competition with each other. There's strange irony to be had here, but at the end of the day, women are, well, she did make 2 rather disgusting videos about me, trashing me on the internet, and that was very, very, well, she made 2 nasty videos about me, and she didn't really need to do that. She also, didn't really. For me, my biggest issue with Pearl is really the way she goes out of her way to put down women, and the way that she doesn't seem interested in trying to actually highlight anything positive about women at all, and how she really just seems to want to, like, pander to male attention without. It's almost like she, like, I was saying, do you think men are stupid? It's like she perceives men as being stupid. Like, she was saying, what do we have that men value? And it's like, character, kindness, warmth, compassion, empathy, creativity. And she goes, what? And it's like, I think she herself is suffering from her own unresolved Madonna Hall complex, which is why I feel so strongly about this, because she's obviously very insecure about the fact that she's not a virgin. And instead of saying, okay, I'm not a virgin, but I still have so much to offer a man, she just constantly seems to just, I think she puts down other women because she's insecure about herself. And I'm just commenting this on her, but again,
No, I mean, but isn't it kind of the case that women just aren't sexy when they talk about politics? Maybe that's a problem for women.
politics. I think women can talk about politics in a way that is coherent and level-headed. Because I do think as well. I mean, I know in ancient Greece, for example, the political sphere was generally dominated by men. Like, I think generally speaking, politics as a whole is more of a masculine space because men are the ones who want to be in charge, and that's not sexism. It's just that politics is generally, because also women general by default are more emotional than men. Most women are just not made to be in politics. I mean, think about it.
Well, yes, because women will be insulted for their looks, that they're fat, or they're sluts, or they, don't have enough sex, or something like that.
That's also why I think slut shaming is so bad, because I understand that women get very emotionally wound up much easier than men. And, because I understand that, like, for example, I think that one of the reasons why, like, Andrew Tate, who's somebody I feel, quite passionate about, somebody I have a tremendous amount of respect for, obviously, most
Would you marry him?
I don't know. But most women,
Sounds like a yes.
whatever. But most women find him very attractive. The only women that don't find him attractive, yes, I would. A man like him would be wonderful, yes. But radical feminists are the only women that are criticizing him. And I think the reason why is because, for example, I've listened to Tate say things. Like, for example, there's a video where he says, he's like, female promiscuity has always been frowned upon. And, most women, especially women who have a history of promiscuity, would look at that and go, oh, this guy's an arse. I remember as well on Paul's show, again, there was a really, really good guy. I really liked him a lot, called Dimitri. He was talking, and it's like, I was listening to them intellectually. I'm not getting angry. I'm sitting there thinking, okay, look, I know they're not wrong. Like, on the whole, generally speaking, men as a whole would prefer to marry. I don't think men really want to marry virgins unless they are virgins. I don't think, generally speaking, men go around thinking I want a virginal wife. I think on the whole, most men, based on statistical evidence, but also just on common sense, men would generally prefer to marry a woman who slept with a few amounts of partners. I think we'll say between 3 and 7 as a general average. I think the average man, or even I think in this day and age, I don't think a guy who's in his 30s would look down on a girl who's, say, been with, I don't know, 10 guys as a woman of good character on the whole. But I think on the whole, men generally view, if a woman has slept with a lot of people, a lot of men, perceive her in a negative way. And what I'm trying to do is say, okay, realistically, I know this is the state of many women of my generation, including myself. I'm trying to think, how can we move forward from that? Rather than whining and going, oh, well, men are sitting there and they're saying I'm undesirable because I slept 20 with 30 and 40. Okay, well, let's sit and think about it. Because actually, we have to think, how can we move forward so we can make things better for our future daughters? And that's also why I think we should we should say sex should be for relationships. I also think we shouldn't support male promiscuity either, because a lot of these men, it's funny because a lot of men, including Mr. Tate himself, will say, female promiscuity. Like, well, what about male promiscuity? What about...
Well, it takes two to tango. I mean,
it does.
obviously...
But here's the thing, because this is, again, men and women are different. It's like men will usually condemn female promiscuity, but they won't condemn male promiscuity. Whereas women will then, it's the woman who will say, like, I think this actually happened historically. I think actually, because I think there was a time when men could have 4 wives, but it was women who came along and said, no, let's have monogamy. This is actually a very feminine thing. It's the man who will say, or men who will say, right, men, have multiple wives and concubines, and then a woman will come along and say, no, this is actually bad. Let's have monogamy. Let's have one man and one woman. This is a very, very... Again, this is the dynamic between men and women.
Would you be one of the wives of Andrew Tate?
I wouldn't...
One of the 4 wives of Andrew Tate?
I wouldn't want to be one of 4 wives. That's the point. I don't think most women want to be one of 4 wives. I think most women want to be...
Many hands make light work.
No,
and you can keep each other company.
No, but that's not romantic. A woman wants to have her one and only. It's like, for example, I was actually thinking about something about this earlier today, actually. Like, if a man is driven fundamentally to be respected as a man, like, what drives a man? The desire to be respected, the desire to be the man. A woman is driven to have the love and care of the man of her dreams. And it's like, a man wants to be the man, a woman wants to be with the man. But, like, I was saying this a lot at Speaker's Corner, actually. Like, men want respect and women want love, and men are typically more respected in society, whereas women are more loved. It's like, men are usually viewed as being respected for their achievements, their social status, and women are usually viewed as being caring and compassionate. That's why it's quite funny, actually, how, Tate will... It's like, if Tate... All the things I say, men should be men, women should be women, Tate says it and he gets thrown in jail and called a misogynist. I say it and everybody's like, oh, we agree with her, because there's a difference between how we perceive women and men. We perceive men and women in a certain way. I think we're much harder on men in some things, and then we're much softer on women on some things. But I will say this as well. I think that being a very ambitious is hard. And I actually think, well, I know from my own personal life, a woman who's very, very ambitious and a woman who has accomplished a lot in life has a much, much, much harder time achieving the social respect of her society. It's like, if you're a very accomplished and very ambitious woman, like if you say you want to achieve this level of social status, you're much harder to be taken seriously because we don't typically view women in that way. And that's what feminists were saying. They were saying, oh, like, a lot of women weren't getting published. It's not because of sexism, it's because of how we view men and women. In the same way that we don't really care about men's feelings, it's almost like we care more about men's achievements and less about men's feelings, while we care more about women's feelings and less about women's achievements. So I think women who are very accomplished, who have achieved a lot, have to fight harder to be respected by society. I certainly feel that. Like, look at me, I've accomplished a lot in my life, and yet I live like a peasant. It's almost a joke. It's a joke, really, actually. Like, I've accomplished, I'm not complaining, but I'm saying, generally speaking, I'm a very, very accomplished woman for my age. I'm 26 years old, I'm an author, I make videos, and I don't feel like I feel like I've got a bit of social effect. I don't feel like I have the general social, I think that's a very genuine thing. As a woman, you have to fight harder to gain the respect of your society. So I think that, really speaking, regarding men and women, we just have to really understand that men and women are different. We've got to understand that men want respect and women want love, but men also want to feel loved, and women also, especially very, very ambitious women, want to feel respected for their achievements. It's like, especially very, very intelligent women, like very, very intelligent, attractive women as well. These are all psychological things. A woman who's very, very, very good looking, but also very, very intelligent, because women as well are fundamentally valued for beauty. I mean, Marilyn Monroe was like a genius, but she was usually, people just saw her as a sex bomb, and that's an issue, isn't it?
And didn't take her seriously and didn't give her serious roles. Are you a good cook, Zarina?
I can cook.
And so what would your job be if you weren't a political activist?
I'm not a political activist.
You're not a political. You don't consider yourself a political activist? I mean, if somebody asked your occupation, what would you say?
I'm an author. I write books. I'm an author. That's what I am. That's what I do. I'm very proud to be an author. And it's a very, 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 very thankless profession. Most writers, artists, creatives are, really, really kicked out.
What's your most popular book?
Well, it's always how it's been in society. Artistic people like Bukowski, Plath, Van Gogh, Edgar Allan Poe. Like, it's just a common pattern. I think most highly creative, highly artistic people do feel very ignored. And I think that, again, it's like, I mean, a man who is in a high position of power might have the respect and social respect of his peers, but he might not necessarily be cared for. People might might not necessarily view him in a nice way, whereas a woman might be viewed as very, very nice and kind, but she might not necessarily have the same level of social respect that he has. Like, this is a very, very, how shall I say, common thing. It's like, it's much easier for a man to gain social respect and social status, but not necessarily be cared for, or people might just view him as a monster or an arsehole. Whereas a woman might be viewed as like sweet, kind, everybody likes her, but she might not feel like she has the same level of social respect or a social status as the man does. And I think this again where male and female contention comes from. It's like the woman looks at the man and goes, "Oh, everyone respects him. He's like accomplished all these things. Well, I'm also accomplished. Why don't people respect me?" And the man looks at the woman and goes, "Oh, everyone's like, oh, she's all nice and sweet and kind. Well, everyone's so nice to her, and yet they look at me and see an arsehole." You know what I mean? So I think this is something which would really, really speak to just the collective psyche regarding how we view men and women, and how we actually need to start to really, really seriously appreciate people a bit more. You need to appreciate the fact that a lot of high achieving men are also very empathetic, and a lot of kind, empathetic women are also very intellectual and high achieving. And being a beautiful woman doesn't mean, like, one of the things I really appreciated about my most recent ex-boyfriend is that we could talk. Like, I think he really, we had very good intellectual conversations, and that was a lot for me, because sometimes it's hard. I think a lot of very attractive. Being a very, very attractive and very intelligent woman is almost like a kind of double-edged sword, because you feel like it's harder to gain social respect because people look at you as a pretty girl, but then it's also like you also want to be appreciated as a pretty girl.
There's some rule for men to tell the pretty ones are smart and the smart ones are pretty, and do would you like to tell us how you met your last boyfriend? You're single and looking now, are you?
I'm not looking. I'm just going through life.
Right. No. I'm just assuming that any woman who's single talking about relationships is looking. I mean, I don't see any disgrace in saying, might as well say, be honest and say. And anyway, whatever you say, people think, oh, she's single. I'll ask for her for a date or something.
I mean, the
So
problem is, I have a bunch of men proposing to me every week at Speaker's Corner, so I'm trying to be careful about how I word something.
you must choose carefully.
But I have to choose carefully as well, because again, that's what people don't understand is that a woman in my position cannot marry a guy who works in an office. That's not me being cruel, and
What's wrong with men who work in an office?
no, what I'm trying to say is that a woman, the more honest and the more driven that a woman is, the more she is going to need a man who is of a certain social standing. That's what I'm trying to say, is that women who are very fiery, ambitious, driven, like that's why, for example, Sylvia Plath married Ted Hughes, Monroe married DiMaggio, and then
She killed herself.
Frida Kahlo married Diego Rivera. I'm trying to say that women of a certain social standing, women who are very high achieving, are actually going to find it a lot more painful and a lot more frustrating, a lot more difficult to be with a man who they perceive as being less ambitious than them, or maybe less driven. Like if he works in an office or works at a bar, the woman is not going to feel as attracted to him as, say, a man who's, I don't know, very, very successful and high achieving. This is just the reality, and I think people, again, it's a hard situation to be in if you're a very attractive and very, very, very high achieving, very ambitious female. That's the reality. So,
are there any men you admire apart from Andrew Tate? Are there any men whose achievements you admire apart from Andrew Tate?
Jordan Peterson's?
Sorry? Jordan Peterson, did you say?
Yeah, Jordan Peterson's fantastic.
Okay. All right.
But again, I think Tate is very attractive to women because he represents that broken masculine spirit. He represents the hero, the warrior, that drive to be a man. And I've spoken about this with women, like women. I mean, I remember actually I was on this group chat, and there was like me and my female friend were defending Tate, and all the guys were like, saying crappy things about him. It's a very interesting psychology, because it's like, while Tate obviously does have a big male following, I think the people who dislike him are men. I think apart from I think the only women who dislike him are feminists. I don't think any woman looks at him and is like, oh, women instinctively look at a man like him and they're like, wow, yeah, that's a man I'd follow. Man I'd follow.
Well, would you? Do you think we've covered most of the things you want to cover? Or
yes,
if you
I'll
haven't,
conclude by speaking. My women's advocacy philosophy is really about teaching women how to be effectively moving away from the victim-based narrative that feminism has posited, and teaching women to be more in touch with our feminine energy, teaching women to be more women of good moral character, so being caring, being kind, being gentle, being compassionate, finding something in life that you are passionate about. Having a passion is very important for a woman, and also being realistic about finding a man and being realistic about what that means, and also, for the love of God, not being anti-men. Like, as a woman, you need a man. My uncle likes to take the piss out of me a lot. Thank you, uncle. So, women, my message is a universal message for women. It's not coming from any political faction. I'm not really addressing it to any woman. I mean, I think it's mainly going to be young women in the West who are going to resonate with my message, because they're the ones I think who are the most, sorry, I've got a cold, who are the most broken. But, being a woman of good character means treating people well. It means being kind. It means learning to appreciate men, appreciate the male role, appreciate the masculine role, and also figuring out what we can bring to the table as women, what women like. It's like, for example, because again, women just aren't able to feel like women. We're not. Like, most women work 9 to 5 jobs and they're so tired. Like, I think that the average female, again, I'm an outlier female, I'm very ambitious, very, very driven female, but the average female would like to be a wife and mother. Like, my female friends, the majority of my female friends don't want to work. Like, I've got like a few female friends, and they've all of them have said to me, "Oh, Zarina, I'm in my late 20s now. My biological clock is ticking. I want to get married." That's what women want effectively. They want job title wife and mother. And I wish that there was some way for society to really, really tell women it's okay to want that and actually help women find that. And I think the way of finding that is to become a woman of good moral character, is to have a positive view on men, is to only for men that you're romantically attracted to, and to stop, having casual sex and to have sex with men that you want to have a relationship with, to be very honest with men about what you want about finding love, and to really just start to think more about, feminine focused activities. Like, there are so many, there were times when women would sit and like sew or do needlework, music, all of these really feminine things are gone. Our society is just not valuing the feminine. It's all about maths and science and technology. It's like, I think maybe that's why art is not. Oh, is my sound gone? Maybe that's why art is not valued so much. It's all about, STEM and politics. And it's like the things that women want to do more of, like sewing or baking or cooking or doing music, dancing, like all of these girly things are gone. I mean, even like the world we live in is so ugly. All the buildings are ugly, and they're not, it's just such a cold world. So I think we need to restore the feminine. We need to restore elements of the divine feminine back into the Western world. And I think this will really help. What made it help to look at that?
Well, I look forward to reading your book about how to do that when it is out next year, you say.
Yeah, I'll have to edit that on the website.
Okay, then. Well, thank you, Zarina, for coming on my channel. I think you've got quite a lot of interest and engagement on your speech, and perhaps we can speak to each other again before too long.
Yeah. And I really, really appreciate this as a new class. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everyone in the chat. It can be very distracting, but I try not to hate things too much.
Okay. Take care. Thank you for coming. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.